morphology and substance of disciplines which exist today do not correspond fully with the morphology and substance of the disciplines related to humanities and social sciences of the times when Islam played its major role in formulation of those sciences, which is our discussion. Kindly allow my screen sharing possible. Make it possible.
Okay. I will permit.
Okay.
Yeah, please share.
Okay. Next. So the issue is every civilization and every culture has a particular worldview, and that particular worldview is responsible for particular morphology and substance of different ulum or disciplines of learning. We live in an age when Western worldview is primarily responsible for development and shaping of the morphology and substance of the disciplines of humanities and social sciences. We have to consider what is the position of Islam in this regard. Islam's position is midway between two important facts. One is antiquity and another is modernism. So let us have a brief understanding of what is antiquity. You must know that revelation and inspiration has been there for the guidance of humanity all through man's history. And man's attempts at knowing the truth were primarily shaped by inspirations and revelation. And that has been the hallmark of the antiquity. And when we talk of modernism, we come across a lot of stress on observation and also a lot of use of reason. So Islam's position is very unique. It was born and was groomed and developed at a particular stage in human history when historians write that Islam was born in full light of history. That is, things clear, recorded, preserved, developed. So the issue is how the ulum which Muslims were credited with having developed, how did they develop? What was their worldview? You know, Islam's worldview is Tawheedic. And one of the sifat, one of the attributes of Quran is Muhaymina. That is, it is a preserver. It preserved all that was best revealed by Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the guidance of humanity, and whatever was there most essential, most critical for humanity to learn the truth, to appreciate the truth, that was preserved by Islam. So on one side, Islam is connected to the tradition, which is formed by revelation and inspiration. And on the other hand, in Islam, there are all the necessary elements that it can be engaged, it is engaged, it will continue to engage with the last part of human history, what we are living right now. Now, if we have to just make some simple uh, categorization of the morphology and substance of humanities and social sciences of contemporary world and that of the earlier period, then we find very significant differences among them. But that does not mean that the present day social sciences and humanities is not in any way influenced by the contributions of the Muslims or what Islam brought about. That is not so. There is, inshallah, in this very brief lecture, I'll be discussing both things, inshallah. And you will find it that we just come across the world where we find there is a fusion. There is a fusion and a very, we say blending and fusion of these two important dimensions which appeared in human history, one of modernism and another of tradition or antiquity. So what Islamic worldview did, it is earlier adherents who were the leaders of knowledge. What they did, they were confident enough of the substance and the depth of their faith that they could engage with all sorts of studies and sources of knowledge. And with that critical acumenship, with that discernment, that they could find what is healthier, what is in truth, with the ultimate reality, and they sifted it. They were welcoming materials, the things which were abundant by the earlier civilizations. They were welcoming them, whether it had Greek source, it had Indian source, it had Syriac source, it had Iranian source, whatever source the knowledge and information they could come across, they made full use of it. It was just that vision. It was that discernment. It was that capability that they could take things and then evaluate them, and they intended and succeeded in bringing those ulum, in bringing those knowledge in conformity with the higher realities, which were revealed to them through revelations and inspirations. We know of the Greek philosophers, and we know of the sciences which were with them. So what they did, they made a huge contribution of evaluating that whole material. I will give you an example of one of the seminal contributions of Muslims with the whole corpus of knowledge which was available to them. And you can just imagine through this one example that what is the level of the contribution. One of the traits of antiquity and tradition is that it believes in levels of being, that is darjati wujud or maratib wujud. Then this was something very common in all the traditional civilizations. But what Muslims did, they first introduced for the first link name not Muharrik Awwal, only they left which was used by the Greeks, Bari Ta'ala. They introduced Bari Ta'ala. And then Ibn Sina, he just named first link, who is the creator, Wajibul Wujud. And after that, the second link, Mumkinul Wujud. And Muslims demonstrated that there is a yawning gap between the first link and the second link. It is not only that there is a continuity in different levels of being, but there is a big gap between the creator and the creation. This Wajibul Wujud and Mumkinul Wujud, this is a very seminal contribution, not only in philosophy, but in making man understand and realize his relationship and the relationship of the whole of creation with the Creator. This was a big and significant gap which Muslims demonstrated, and they argued for and succeeded in developing philosophy and ulum on these levels. Here, not only continuity, but also characteristics and conformity with the last revelation was demonstrated. And with this, what we call as transcendence, tanzih, it was highlighted much more in Islamic tradition, in Islamic ulum, in Islamic worldview as compared to antiquity. So Islam came even to reform and modify the ideas, the concepts of the antiquity, and then connected it very successfully with the times they had and with the times which were to come. So philosophy was modified to bring it in accordance with the ultimate reality. Dear friends, this was not an experiment which was conducted in some secluded area, geographical area, or a cultural milieu. It was formulated universally, and it had what it was destined for, universal impact. So, though it is basis, as is clear in the hierarchy of the ulum of Islam, its basis is there in revelation and inspirations, but this is something very unique, something very novel, and something which makes Islam not only in conformity with the ultimate truth, not only in conformity with the earlier revelations and the tradition, but helps it and helps the man of our times, the man of future, to get connected, to make use of reason and observation, which are the hallmark of the modernist trend in human history. So Muslims, by blending these observations, reason, and revelation and inspiration, they just developed ulum, which for convenience, we just divide into two important sections. What is ulum-i naqliya, or religious sciences transmitted ulum, and ulum-i aqliya, rational sciences. You know, these fields, fiqh, tasawwuf, kalam, asrar-i sharia, isnad ahadith, shan-i nuzul, different constitutions, philosophy, history, grammar, rhetoric. These were some of the disciplines which are related to our subject, and there Muslims used all these parameters which I have highlighted upon. This, friends, if you take an example of language, just see, Quran was revealed in Arabic, and this language became a great criterion for the new formulations, for the new understanding of the language, for the development of the grammar, for the development of balagha of this language. There was ajaz of this language, its miraculous nature, it was highlighted. Then we have scholars who developed the rules, grammatic rules of Arabic, and the area of this engagement of scholars, this was ever widening from Arabian Peninsula to North African countries and whole Iranian plateau, and also to Spain. So in a way, it covered Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe for the development of these ulum. And just see, these languages, Arabic language, it was embraced by this, because this became also the lingua franca of the Muslims, and also the language for intellectual expression. Iranians who just embraced Islam and learned Arabic, they were involved in the development of the language and literature of the new culture and civilization they opted for. And then we have, even though their regional languages, they were new mutations of the languages. New languages were formulated, and new languages were uh, uh, carriers of that high cultural themes, which are the hallmark of Islam, where reality, the truth, the higher echelons of reality are discussed, are brought closer to human experience. So even Persian, Pahlavi language, which was there, pre-Islamic Persian and post-Islamic Persian, lot of difference and lot of uh, influence of the Arabic styles on the Persian language. We have Turkish language, we have Urdu. The people of subcontinent, they know what it is. You just name a language which is spoken by any majority group of Muslims, which is not influenced by Islamic and Arabic themes. Uh, we know of Urdu, Swahili, Kashmiri. Uh, I just remember that so many languages in the world, they are influenced by the styles, by grammar, by grammatic rules, by rhetoric, and most of, by the high themes that is the hallmark of Islamic literature. Just see that when Muslims engaged, we have Ibn Muqaffa. What is an Iranian uh, who just produced Kalila wa Dimna? Okay, you just say stories and fables based on some Indian story, which was earlier translated into Pahlavi, Persian, then into Arabic. So the scholars were looking here and there and finding whatever was valuable there and enriched Arabic language. We have another set of this experiences when Arabic stories, they were translated into the other languages. We have uh, uh, Arabian Nights, which is one of the most famous books which have been translated from Arabic into other major languages of the world. Dear friends, whatever Islam and Muslims produced, there are a few personalities which can help us understand influence of Islam and its character on what contemporary knowledge we have. One of the names we have is Ibn Khaldun. He uh, he just not only just compiled a history, which earlier also history had been compiled. Though this too is not a small thing. That when I just mentioned Asnad Hadith, uh, I am fortunate enough to have been teaching in the Department of Islamic Studies, development of historiography. And there I just focus on the point that Isnad, that chain of narration, this was people were not knowing it, that this is a way of preserving things, and there are chains of narrations, and they not only uh, preserved some account but gave the chain of narration also, and this was used more scrupulously in ulumi naqliya, but even ulumi aqliya in history. These, we one of the great Muslim historians and mufassir of Quran, Imam Tabari, his book Kitab Rasul wal Muluk, what it talks of, he just disclosed, and not only disclosed, he maintained a record of the sources he got the information from, and also the whole chain of the narrators. This made myths clear from the accounts, which can be verified, which can be checked, which can be modified on the basis of a stronger chain of narration. So this is something very unique. But Ibn Khaldun, by writing Kitab al-Ibr, he not only wrote a world history, but he just, in his Muqaddimah, he just discussed what is philosophy of history. And he was very diligent scholar. And with his diligence, he was able to discover lot of physical factors which are responsible for social dynamism. He talked of Hadara. He talks of what makes people to change or affect others. What are the things? And he talked about the people who were there, dwellers in the Bedouins, and what is the bonding among them. What he talked about Asabiya, what makes them to fight, what makes them the people who are there in cities living, whose lifestyle is very much stable, and how after some generations they become lazy, and then when they are well fed, then they lose that spirit to fight or to defend, and the new people come, how new people take over. And when he told about the human civilizations, like a living cell which has a birth, which has or living objects which have a birth, which has childhood, which have an age of maturity, and then decadence starts, and we have the death of a culture and civilization. I just remember how he talks about, though he just focuses more on identification of the physical factors responsible for cultural and social dynamism, he talks about the law, and he just makes a distinction between a society which is primarily inspired by revelation, and he talks about it, how Sharia, how the inspired law, and those who are guided by the prophetess, how they even forfeit lot of the physical conclusions which otherwise we can make about the common people, because of their separate, because of their high character, how they can even defeat many of those postulates or the hypotheses which otherwise govern man's physical engagements. Dear friends, Ibn Khaldun is considered as father of sociology. He is one of the scholars who continues to attract the modern minds who are more inclined to understanding the physical aspects which are responsible for the creation of social dynamism. So Ibn Khaldun that way makes a relation with our time. Though I told you that there are a lot of elements within his treatise which help us to realize the higher realms of the reality. We come across another name, Abu Rayhan al-Biruni. He too has a very strong influence on our times. Not only that he was a scientist, not only he has contributed a lot in physics, in a lot of fields, but I want to just focus my attention on one of the things, that he was a Persian by birth, and how he came to India with Mahmoud Ghaznavi, and how he learned Sanskrit. It was always a language of the few, for the transmission of the ulum, not for the laity, but for few. How he could just learn Sanskrit language, that is always a source of inspiration for all the scholars, that if they have to dedicate themselves for learning, then they have to do things like he did to know Sanskrit. Then He is considered one of the first Indologists. We have a lot of now European names as Indologists. But when we know the book he has written about India, that is a book not only about another country, that is a civilizational study. How you can just to know the civilizational roots of other people. And this is one of the very foremost disciplines which people, when they talk of interdisciplinary, when they talk of empathy, when they talk of cross-cultural studies, we see Abu Rayhan al-Biruni standing very tall in this field, the one who has laid the foundations of such study. And let me tell you, he was a Persian, and Persian was his mother tongue, but he would write all his major treatises in Arabic. And I remember one of his sayings, Persian is not a sufficient vehicle for expressing high intellectual theme. It is only Arabic which is sufficient for that. Let me now focus on third important personality. I just feel that those people who are interested in humanities, in social sciences, let them know that one of the problems of the modern post-Renaissance development of ulum was that it was disconnected. An intention on the part of those who were the leaders of Renaissance to disconnect it with all the religious descriptions of the reality. And I'm not going to the field what church had done or not done, but this was something which resulted to a lot of problems with the development of what we call as the Western sciences, where without reference to revelation, without reference to God, they tried to understand and even manage and thought of progress and development for the human societies and culture and human sciences without reference to revelation, without reference to the extra, what we can call as extra sensorial sources of knowledge. Dear friends, we have to just understand that one of the fundamental points of Islam is that it believes in levels of being. For us, senses are very important. And we, all of us, we thank God for blessing us with senses. We make use of senses, and we have a hierarchy of senses as well. Our eyes, we give them more importance to our ears. Our observation is very important. Lot of things we observe. Then we have been given a rational faculty. We are blessed with intellectual capabilities, but that is not the sum total of human faculties. Dear friends, when I told you that Islam is actually, Islam represents a blending of antiquity and modernism. Islam presents a harmonious link between tradition and modern trends. What does it mean? It means if modernism is marked by observation and by reason, rationality, Islam retains this all without minimizing or demonizing them. Observations are important, intellectual formulations are important, rationality is important, but Islam introduces to us our own selves, which are not only comprised of our senses and our rational faculty. We have the intuitive capability. We humans receive revelations. So our intuitive capabilities, the revelations, inspirations, they have a fundamental role in formulation of ulum which Islam gave birth to. So for us, social sciences are informed of not only by our observations, by our rational, by the application and of our rational faculty, but on the basis of revelation and on the basis of inspiration. Let me tell you very important things about this whole discourse. The whole discourse is formulated by that Allah talks about, revelation speaks about certain values. It talks of certain ideals. Then, but it does not put man just to suspend his faculty of reason or faculty of senses. It encourages him to make use of his senses and his rational faculty in conformity with the higher reality, which is fully revealed by revelation. So we have those ulum which guide man, that whatever is given, how it can be transformed in the forms which are higher, which are in conformity with the nature of man, with the purpose of universe, with the purpose God has created this universe. How those ulum are brought in conformity with that. And if you ask me, sir, give a one single example to understand this whole, I have one name which is close to our place of discussion, that is Shah Waliullah Muhaddis Dahlavi, the man of 18th century. If the people who know about him, they have to focus on a few things, then you will just understand that Shah Waliullah, he talks in his Hujjatullah al-Baligha, his Smainal book, he talks of different levels of being. He talks of Almi Hahut, he talks of Almi Nasut, he talks of Almi Malakut, he talks of Almi Misal, different levels of being. Then he talks, what is Sa'ada? What is felicity? What is felicity? And how human civilization can have different stages on the basis of their commitment to Sa'ada, whether they want to fulfill only the physical appetites or they have a higher sense of living, which can be achieved when his man's quest is not only for the satisfaction of the material aspirations, but he is conscious of his spirit and his higher faculty as well. Then he talks that man is not only a civilization, cannot be there, which only takes care of its material needs. It's not only needs, it is also, he uses the word, what we can call a zina, that is aesthetics. Now he makes a distinction of the higher faculty of the man, that civilizations can be there when they have not only the systems where their material needs are met, but they take care how their, that Zoki Jamal, how their higher sense of aesthetics operates. And he talks of very important three terms are belong to him, that is Tahzib-e Nafs, Tadbir-e Manzil, and Siyasat-e Mudun. Tahzib-e Nafs, that he starts with the individual for the purification of his self, that where he allows his real self to operate, where he allows his real self to behave, and for that he needs its purification, and that will lead to Tadbiri Manzil. He is in a family, and how family management takes place. This is the first unit. Family structure is now in tatters in the West, in all those societies which are mimicking them. But for Islamic civilization and culture, family is the first stable unity of a society. Stability of the family is stability of a society. And he, Tadbiri Manzil, where he discusses how different roles are assigned, how the leadership and the hierarchy operates in a family, how care is taken of different individuals in a family, how needs of different levels of those who are there. There are old people, there are siblings, there may be some, there are women folk, there are men, how a harmonious relationship is built up at that level. And then he talks an extension of this family. We have the society, and we talk of siyasat-e-mudun, how states can be governed. And let me tell you, I was telling you of the ulum. We have one of the ulum sir, that is the study of the international relations. We had no nation states in those times. This is just a creation of a modern period. But different people living at different places, having different political and cultural systems, Islam laid the principles of interrelationship between different cultures and civilizations and the countries, of having different cultural and political persuasions. Siyasat-e-mudun talks about it, how societies can be run. It is not only administration where physical needs of a society ought to be catered, but where intellectual, spiritual, and what Shahulullah calls of sa'ada, felicity. And he often talks about that Islam claims for itself that it invites people to sa'adati daran, not only felicity of this world, but the felicity of the other world. So let the people have a life which is worth living in this world, but which prepares them for salvation in the hereafter, and also eternal felicity, which is bestowed by the mercy and blessings of God only for those who take care of their higher realms, higher concerns in this life. Thank you very much. I think my time has come to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Majid Sahab. And the time now is the time for question and answer. Please, Dr. Ishtar, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
उससे बातचीत हुई थी ना आपकी कुछ काम
Unfortunately, he has lost his connection. So please, attendees are requested to ask your question to Dr. Abdul Majid Sahab. Can you type your question in question answer box or raise your hand? ये डॉक्टर साहब आप Q&A देख सकते हैं क्या आपने यहाँ? अब जो Q&A देखिए उसमें वन नजर आ रहा है, एक क्वेश्चन आया है.
Can you throw some light on contribution of Islam to politics and international
दो क्वेश्चन आ गए जी.
What is the relationship between geography and Islam? Let me come to the first point, that can you throw some light on contribution of Islam to politics and international relations? I am fortunate enough to have been engaged with teaching of Muslim political thought in Islam for the last 23 years in Aligarh Muslim University. Dear friends, Islam's position is that it wants humans to develop fully and to have a system which is congenial for their growth as is demanded from them in the world. So we had of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the man who guided us, and Islam talked about full allegiance to Islam and to the Prophet of Islam. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Rasul and Nabi, and also head of the Islamic State, where he developed that cultural, those institutions which were congenial for humans to pursue the goals of humanity, and which are in conformity with the demands of Islam. Then after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu became the Khalifa, he said that Ana Khalifatul Rasul. And Hazrat Umar, when he came, he said Ana Khalifatu Rasulillah. And when Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu came, he said Ana Khalifa Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was continued like that. That is one function of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was leading the ummah in space-time framework for the achievement of the goals which are which are congenial to the goals of Islam per se. That is protection of deen, that is protection of the people, that is providing them what is necessary and establishing justice, and for the creation of the wealth as well. We talk of distributive justice, but many people forget about it, that Islam creates a culture where people don't become lazy. They have to work very hard, and then they have to share it with others. So we have the Khilafah ala Minhajun Nabuwah as a first model. Later, whatever political developments took place, we had the scholars, like we have a lot of scholars who tried to actually try to connect what was given with the ideals of Islam. How ideals of Islam could have a bearing on improving the situations of the times they were living in. If we talk of Nizamul Muluk Tusi, we talk of a lot of people who are there. But this is in my nutshell, this is the goal. But let me tell you, and Khilafah of Ottomans, which was disbanded in 1922, Muslims continued in one form or the other the struggles for re-establishing their institutions, the institutions which could serve them better. So we have always what we can call as transitional stages in human history. But there is no doubt about it that Islam likes it, that people have those political systems which are helpful for achieving the goals they are set for. What is it? Helping man realize God on earth, connecting to all the humanity, establishing justice, every sort of justice, social justice, economic justice, and political justice as well. And that is something what is, when I was talking of the ideals, but Islam does create in humans a sense that their engagement with what is present while having the basic commitment to Islam, then they need not to be what we can call as they are in some hurry or something. They may do something without sensing the repercussions. That is not what is sought of the believers. They have to be very confident that let them play their role, but they have to be connected with the ideals of Islam. And that is a message which Islam brings us, that udkhulu fi silmi kafa, and all sort of sovereignty is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. And they have to see that hierarchy where they can be governed by the people who are worth it, who are worth to be emulated, who are worth to be obeyed. This is something I have to say on this point. And the second point was geography and Islam. You were just talking about it, you know, that we have ulum, geographical ulum, but you know the basic thing that in Islamic ibadah, if we start with ibadah, our ibadah is that we have to face Kaaba, and every year people have to go for Hajj. So it was always the need of the people to know which direction, where we can just, which way is the Kaaba. And then people of Arabia, they were the traders, they had to know the routes. And those who embraced Islam, you know that they almost a big portion of then civilized world was brought under the sway of Islam. And there were people who just made very tremendous contributions in this field. And we have books filled with it. I just remember one of the books that of Sayyid Hussain Nasr. He says that how these great gents, how did they produce the material on geography, that still even small fragment of that is not fully translated. We cannot think of. So much material is in Arabic only. We see Ibn Masudi, and even when Muslims lost the political control over Sicily, then still then the Muslim scholars of geography, they were consulted by the non-Muslim scholars for understanding the different geographical facts. Okay, what is there's Khansa Fahad. She asks me some books for the beginners who have science background. Let me tell her that I too have science background, and I would just certainly guide you to the books if those people who want to know about Islamic ulum. And for us, there's a man who has his credentials are well intact. His name is Sayyid Hussain Nasr. He has formulated in a very beautiful way. I suppose those people who have a science background, my background is also science. And Alhamdulillah, it is only later on that I have learned these sciences. And he is the best author. I can just suggest you for the time being. Okay. Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun is because it talks about the philosophy of history. It talks about the physical factors which the modern civilization, our times, are very much interested in knowing, observing the facts which are there. How the people, those in cold climate, the people in the deserts, how do they behave? How their behavioral patterns are decided? How physical factors are responsible for that? So for philosophy, for understanding the factors, physical factors, and their impact on social dynamism, it is very much relevant. By Allah's grace, I am conversed. I know both of them, Dr. Ali Shariati and Sayyid Hussain Nasr. Dr. Ali Shariati was a pure revolutionary, no doubt from the Islamic perspective. He saw the societies mimicking the West without understanding them. And the whole Muslim world was as if they were to have the replicas of the West. So he questioned the very foundations of the materialistic thoughts. I just remember on Marxism, on sociology of Islam, and he had fortunate to have been taught in Sorbonne, and he had a very good understanding of the Western philosophical thoughts. And also he was very much influenced by Islam's zeal for a change for better in conformity with the reality. Though he had more exposure to the Western world, so we may just have academic differences with some of his formulations or some of his understandings regarding Islam. But I here just to highlight one of the points Imam Khomeini gave a response to such a question when he said that we are ulama. We discuss a lot about Islamic issues, but our opinions also may not always correspond with the truth and reality. There can be mistakes on our part also, and he's a well-meaning intellectual, Muslim intellectual. He too can have some opinions, and for that he needs not to be demonized. So I have a high regard for Dr. Ali Shariati, and in very young age he embraced Shahada, which I'm sure he was killed. Then the question of Sayyid Hussain Nasr, mashallah, he is a leading light of our times, because for us it is not only writings, it is authenticity, it is the bona fide character. If somebody says something, and unfortunately the Western sciences, Western ulum, knowing them, engaging with them with a very higher perspective of the tradition is not so easily available. So we have Sayyid Hussain Nasr, one who is well versed in the tradition and who is well versed with the Western ulum, and he is supremely qualified for restating the traditional viewpoints about the issues which we confront these days. So Sayyid Hussain Nasr is a scholar superb for us to learn from. Dear friends, you have asked me about politics of Islam. You just see, we have, I don't know your level of knowing things, but one of the books which is very simple, only I came across this book a few years only back. So I just suggest to MA students, for those who want to understand in a very, very simple language, we have a person from Pakistan, his name is Dr. Mahmoud Ahmed Ghazi. Dr. Mahmoud Ahmed Ghazi has written a book on politics on Islam or something, studies on Islamic politics. And that is a book which talks about certain theoretical questions and some great scholars who have contributed in the political field. And also he brings it to our times as well. So I think that this should suffice for those who have. There is a question on Islam and psychology. This is one of the very contested fields of our times. But let me tell you now, psychology is transforming, and they are adding some dimensions, and they are giving them their due weight. What they say that there is a lot of, in overall social sciences, there is a stress on empathy, that if people have different experiences, they have not to be dictated from a particular prestigious perspective. They are to be given due weight, and this helps us to let there be addition of the critical dimensions that Islam believes. It is not only the molecular biology which is operative in a human being for bringing particular changes in human psyche. There is human spirit, there is qalb, there is ruh, and these are, because of the positivist obsession of the modern Western civilization, they are not always very comfortable with these terms. But with the changes in the Western social sciences of our time and the crisis they face, psychology is one of the leading subjects where they feel that we should give full weight to those perspectives which are experienced and believed by others. And I think this can widen its scope and also bring significant changes in the times to come. Is it any other question, or is it over?
It's over.
ये निसारुल करीम साहब, आपने हाथ रेज किया हुआ है, हैंड रेज किया हुआ है, तो आई थिंक टाइम इज ओवर.
यस सर. Can I ask a question? Hello, sir.
Yeah, if the organizers allow it, I don't have any problem.
Okay. The time is over. Inshallah, in next lecture you will try to please, time is over. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Majid Sahab. And next lecture is
Thank you all. Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You can just contact me through my email or any other query you have. I am there in the Department of Islamic Studies, and my email is available with the organizers. And in this, I have shared my email also with you, so you are most welcome to engage with me on anything you feel proper.
thank you very much.
Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah. सैयद जमालुद्दीन साहब, आप म्यूट जरा अनम्यूट कीजिए. अनम्यूट कीजिए जमालुद्दीन साहब. रिक्वेस्ट देखिए मैं भेज रहा हूं यहां से. जी ओके जी, अनम्यूट हो गया, बोलिए.
जी हाँ, अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
जी वालेकुम सलाम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू.
अस्सलाम.
कैमरा थोड़ा नीचे करें तो ताकि पूरा चेहरा आ जाए आपका.
चेहरा ऊपर न करें, कैमरा नीचे करें. अब ठीक है
जी, अब ठीक है.
भाभी का शुक्रिया, अब आपका चेहरा दिख रहा है.
शुक्रिया साहब. क्या चेहरा है साहब. अब
अरे साहब, चेहरा ही तो है माशाल्लाह, हम तो खुश हो जाते हैं. और मेरा सलाम अर्ज कर दीजिए जरा भाभी से.
जी सलाम कह रहे हैं. वालेकुम सलाम कह रही हैं साहब. The subject I am asked to speak on is multiculturalism in Islam. This is a subject which in fact belongs to the disciplines of sociology, political theory, or anthropology. However, I have read a bit on it and prepared something for the audience. My sincerest salam to all the participants, and I wish them a good day. I will be first giving definition of certain terms which will be used in this presentation, and then we'll come to the discourse connected with multiculturalism in Islam, especially with reference to debates going on in Europe and elsewhere. Multiculturalism is the belief, according to Cambridge Dictionary, is the belief that different cultures within a society should all be given importance. That is to say, in India, there exist so many cultures, they should all be given importance, whether these cultures belong to linguistic groups, religious groups, they should be given equal importance. The Oxford Dictionary also mentions similar meaning, the presence of or support for the presence of several distinct cultural or ethnic groups within a society. So multiculturalism is a situation in which all the different cultural or racial groups in a society have equal rights and opportunities, and none is ignored or regarded as unimportant. Successful culturalism builds the bonds of community, leading to interracial, interethnic friendships etc. It's a term that has come to serve as shorthand for a host of different related cultural and educational issues. Now, I come straight to certain other things which we will be discussing here, like first, and this is what I am going to discuss, in fact, in the afternoon session when I will be speaking on non-Muslims under the Muslim rule in India. But here, in a passing way, I will mention that the Sharia gives appropriate place to the non-Muslims. And there is a history behind it. The Prophet, when he drafted the Medina Constitution, Mizaq-e Medina, he gave rights to non-Muslims, and these rights were given in the light of the Quranic verses. That is, for example, La ikraha fi din, let there be no compulsion in religion. Unto you your religion, and to me my religion, lakum dinukum waliya din, etc. Then there is a hadith also in this connection, that whoever wrongs one with whom a treaty has been made and lays on him a burden beyond his strength, I will be his accuser. So it's a very strong stand. The Constitution of Medina was a formal agreement between the Prophet and all the significant tribes and families of Medina, including Muslims, Jews, and pagans, that non-Muslims in the Ummah have the certain rights. For example, the security, that is Zimma, from which the word comes Zimmi, the security of God is equal for all groups. That is, the state undertakes the responsibility of providing security to all without any discrimination. Then non-Muslim members have equal political and cultural rights as Muslims. They will have autonomy and freedom of religion. Non-Muslims will take up arms against the enemy of the Ummah and share the cost of war. There is to be no treachery between the two, and that non-Muslims will not be obliged to take part in religious wars of the Muslims. Then there is a pact of Umar also, the second caliph, but some Orientalists have doubted the authenticity of the pact. Coming to rights, again, the position of Islam becomes very clear in the final sermon of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Al-Wada Khutbah, the last sermon, in which was delivered by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam on Friday, the 9th Zulhijjah, 10th Hijri, or 6 March 632, in the Urana valley of Mount Arafat. Now, what I have chosen certain clauses from certain points from this. First, the Prophet ﷺ said, "O people, verily you owe your women their rights, and they owe you yours." Second, O people, and then it also mentions about the modesty which women should observe. O people, believers are but brothers. No one may take his brother's property without his consent. And third, and which is very important in the present context, is, O people, so said the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, your Lord is one and your Father is one. All of you are from Adam, and Adam was from the ground. The noblest of you in Allah's sight is the most God-fearing, muttaqi. Arab has no merit over non-Arab other than God-fearingness. This is a clear message. And towards the end of this sermon, he said, then let whomever is present tell whomever is absent. That is, the sermon has to be communicated to the rest of the members of the community. Then there are certain terms which will be there in the course of today's lecture. One is liberalism. So this is the concept, political concept or doctrine, which is being debated in Europe, particularly in UK. What does liberalism mean? Liberalism, it's a political doctrine that takes protecting and enhancing the freedom of the individual to be the central problem of politics. Liberals typically believe that government is necessary to protect individuals from being harmed by others, but they also recognize that government itself can pose a threat to liberty. The problem then is to devise a system that gives government the power necessary to protect individual liberty, but also prevents those who govern from abusing that power. Then as we will come across another term, that is cultural pluralism. Cultural pluralism is a term used when smaller groups within a larger society maintain their unique cultural identities, whereby their values and practices are accepted by the dominant culture, provided such are consistent with the laws and values of the wider society. As a sociological term, the definition and description of cultural pluralism has evolved over time. In a pluralistic culture, groups not only coexist side by side, but they also consider qualities of other groups as traits worth having in the dominant culture. Pluralistic societies place strong expectations of integration on members rather than expectations of assimilation. So this is integration versus assimilation. What is the difference between integration and assimilation? See, integration involves contact and identification with both cultures. Separation involves identification with one culture of one's heritage, country, and context with one's own group members. Assimilation, on the other hand, involves identification with the host country's culture and non-acceptance of one's heritage culture. This is the difference. Now, cultural pluralism is quite distinct from multiculturalism, which lacks the requirement of a dominant culture. In 1971, for example, the Canadian government referred to cultural pluralism as opposed to multiculturalism as the very essence of the nation's identity. Cultural pluralism can be practiced at varying degrees by a group or an individual. A prominent example of this cultural pluralism is the United States in the previous century, in which a dominant culture with strong elements of nationalism, a sporting culture, and an artistic culture contained also smaller groups with their own ethnic, religious, and cultural norms, although we find so much of evidence of racial prejudice happening there. Now, coming to multiculturalism, it is the view that cultures, races, and ethnicities, particularly those of minority groups, deserve a special acknowledgement of their differences within a dominant political culture. For example, take India or Europe for that purpose. The veil, hijab or abaya, the long dress or the long robe women wear. These are particular with Muslim women, part of their culture. If they want to use veil, if they want to put hijab, if they want to dress in abaya, it should not be unacceptable to the majority community, and laws which are being made, they should not be imposed on them. Even the educational institutions imposed such restrictions, which is not acceptable in multiculturalism. The life of the political community as a whole demands special protection under the law for certain cultural groups. Now, for example, there are demands by gays, lesbians, and the third gender. Only today I read in my Times of India that a woman has come up to build a shelter house for the transgenders. So this is how they are being accommodated and taken care of under this concept of multiculturalism. Now, there is, when coming to Islam, there is, recently we have heard of it, and you must be familiar with this, is the clash of civilization theory. And it has been discussed by several authors, scholars, social scientists, political theorists. This is born out of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is not an unfounded hostility against Islam, but a hostility that has its last raison d'etre in the fear of multiculturalism and its consequences. To demonstrate this hypothesis, one author has expressed the opinion that we are experiencing the West and Islam. It has been argued that Europe perceives Islam as a transruptive force that through transculturation processes might be able to challenge the alleged Judeo-Christian heritage of Europe. Islamophobia stems from the defense and resistance against the possible effects of real multicultural context between Islamic values and European Western ones. Now, again, since I'm using this this word Islamophobia. So let me clarify what it means. Islamophobia is the fear of, hatred of, or prejudice against the religion of Islam or Muslims in general, especially when seen as a geopolitical force or the source of so-called terrorism. See, for example, in India, we find that people of the right way saying that if the population of Muslims is not checked, it will be in majority, for example. The meaning of the term continues to be debated, and some scholars view it as problematic. Several scholars think that Islamophobia is a form of racism, although the legitimacy of this definition is disputed because it is not racism. It has something to do with religion and religious doctrines. Some scholars, on the other hand, they think that Islamophobia and racism as partially overlapping phenomena, while others dispute the relationship primarily on the grounds that religion is not a race. The causes and characteristics of Islamophobia are also subjects of debate. Some commentators have submitted that there is an increase in Islamophobia resulting from the September 11 attacks, the rise of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and other terror attacks in Europe and the United States by Muslim extremists. Some have associated it with the increased presence of Muslims in the United States and in the European Union, while others view it as a response to the emergence of a global Muslim identity. In India also, this hatred has increased after the demolition of Babri Masjid, the Godhra incident, or the riots following the demolition of the Babri Masjid. Now, there are two how do people see India or Islam as a multicultural world? Some time ago, there was one Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf. He participated in a panel discussion on Islam in a multicultural world, experiences from Malaysia and the United States at the American University. He argued that societies derive real benefits when different ethnic and cultural groups work together. He explained how the identities of societies evolve over time and incorporate different cultural influences as their own. We who have worked in Jamia Millia Islamia, we know how this has happened in Jamia. People coming from different cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds, linguistic backgrounds, we all sat together and discussed academic issues and in order to arrive at some consensus on a solution of our problems. The Rauf cites the importance of immigration in a successful multicultural society. He claimed that immigrants bring intellectual and financial capital to their adopted countries, along with their own cultural identities. He cites, for example, immigration from South Asia to the UK, which led to curry and beer becoming the favorite meal at British football matches. When I was visiting the UK, a friend of mine told that now there is mushrooming of the only vegetarian restaurants. And it was an impact of the Buddhists settling there in the UK, I was told. And now we know that how a Turkish couple, he collaborated with his fellow German scientists to you see, produce this COVID-19 vaccine. So it was welcomed by the whole world, including the Muslims. Rauf also argues that the success of Malaysia and the United States lies in each country's willingness to embrace multiculturalism. This did not happen in Indonesia, for example, and therefore they had to lose one of their islands, which was which had Christian population in majority. He pleads for the establishment of mono-ethnic societies. He said that efforts to establish mono-ethnic societies in Egypt and Indonesia resulted in gradual decadence there. Now how Muslims and are confronted with European multiculturalism. Muslims are making unreasonable demands, it is, on European society. This is one opinion. Why do they say, they argue, we so often hear Muslims described as them instead of us? There is an anti-Muslim wind blowing across the European continent. One factor is a perception that Muslims are making politically exceptional, culturally unreasonable, or theologically alien demands upon European states. But it is contended that the claims Muslims are about gender or ethnic equality, seeing this issue in the context shows how inseparably European and contemporary is the logic of mainstream Muslim identity politics. Then European anxieties and phobias in relation to immigration and cultural diversity focus on Muslims more than any other group. Muslims are not, even in India, Muslims are not a homogeneous group. Some Muslims are devout but apolitical. Some are political, but they do not see their politics as being Islamic because they are being guided by the Western, modern Western concepts of politics. Some identity more with a nationality of origin, such as Turkish. Others with the nationality of settlements and perhaps citizenship, such as French. Some prioritize fundraising for mosques, others campaigns against discrimination, unemployment, or Zionism. Muslims in Europe do not form a single political bloc or class formation, although they are disproportionately among the lowest paid, unemployed, and underemployed. Muslims also have the most extensive and developed discourses of unity, common circumstance, and common victimhood among peoples of non-European Union origin within the EU. This sense of community may be partial, may depend upon context and crisis, may coexist with other overlapping or competing commitments or aspirations. But it is an actual us partly different upon others, seeing Muslims and partly causing others to see Muslims as a them. Muslims in India too do not make a single political group. They have, for example, a group of Muslims is affiliated with Congress. Another group is associated with the Samajwadi Party. Another with RJD. Another with the Oasis Party. Another group associated with the Muslim League in Kerala, so on and so forth. So in Bengal, they are with the Congress, they are with the Tribunal Congress, they are with communist parties. So they are not following one political philosophy. Then there are many reports of harassment and attacks against Muslims. We come to know about it from media, and Muslims having expressed both vulnerability and defiance, having become a focus of national concern and debate. Muslims have found themselves beyond of a new wave of suspicion and hostility, and strongly voiced imprecise doubts are being cast on their loyalty as citizens. There has been widespread questioning about whether Muslims can or are willing to be integrated into European society and its political values. In particular, whether Muslims are committed to what are taken to be the core European values of freedom, tolerance, democracy, sexual equality, and secularism. There is a significant shift from an understanding of equality in terms of individualism and cultural assimilation to a politics of recognition, to equality as encompassing public ethnicity. This perception of equality means not having to hide or apologize for one's origins, family, or community, and requires others to show respect for them. Public attitudes and arrangements must adopt so that this heritage is encouraged, not contemptuously expected to wither away. These two conceptions of equality maybe are like this: the right to assimilate to the majority dominant culture in the public sphere with toleration of difference in the private sphere. The right to have one's difference recognized and supported in both the public and the private spheres. The Muslims, globally speaking, they are campaigning for religious equality. There should be no religious discrimination, and they want parity with native religions, and positive inclusion of religious groups is being demanded. British Muslims, they want to be seen as British Muslims, not as something alien or foreign. Then there is a debate going on along with multiculturalism is regarding liberty. We are living, there is one Anshuman Mondal, he is associated with the School of Arts, Brunei University. He says that we are living through a particularly difficult times in the development of Britain as a multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-faith society. Even before the terrorist attacks in London on 7 July 2005, racial, ethnic, and religious tensions had led to the beginnings of a re-evaluation of multiculturalism. Now, this why this Muslims get worried on certain important issues. For example, he points out that in June 2003, the Farm Animal Welfare Council, FAWC, a government advisory body, published a report calling for, amongst other things, the termination of an exemption clause in animal welfare legislation that allows Jewish and Islamic butchers to practice ritual slaughter methods known as shishita and halal, respectively. Arguing that the exemption from stunning an animal prior to its slaughter, an act which contradicts both Jewish and Muslim edicts that the animal in question should be absolutely uninjured before the commencement of the ritual. It causes extreme suffering. It argues that Jews and Muslims, if they want to continue their ritual practices, they must submit to the necessity of partially stunning the animal first. Now, this the FAWC argues is the human way of conducting slaughter of animals according to Jewish or Muslim custom. Now, it is there in Islam, but that animal should not be injured before it is slaughtered. But the thing is that animal protection, animal rights protection movements are also on the increase, not only there in UK or Europe, but also in India. We find that there are groups which are against slaughterhouses for one or the other reason. They make politics out of it. Now, another thing which is getting attention of scholars is that multiculturalism has shifted its ground, and there is liberal discourse is taking place, is replacing it. Our early multiculturalism adopted the liberal distinction between public and private spheres. Unlike the individualist liberalism that underwrote the assimilation doctrine, it accepted that individuals were culturally embedded and that these cultures should be accepted in the public sphere. However, only certain aspects of culture were seen as publicly important, in particular race, ethnicity, nationality, gender, and sexuality. Other differences such as religion, language were to be reserved for the private or domestic sphere. In other words, only the secular aspects of culture were recognized within the divorce of real early multiculturalism. But things began to change after the Satanic versus affair. It's significant that the shift was initiated by Muslims, and it has been sustained since by developments, both domestic and international, that have circulated through the channels of a globalized media. In theory, liberalism sees only the relationship between the state and the individual as mediated through the law as important. In practice, it does need to ground itself in a culture, for the law cannot be an abstract body of doctrines, but rather must reflect the values and sentiments of those who create and adhere to it. In other words, the making of laws presupposes a shared body of values amongst the state's population, such that the authority of the law is recognized as being valid. The liberal concept of citizenship is not therefore merely a politico-legal concept, but also a cultural one. Historically, nationalism has provided the cultural glue that binds together the liberal theory of a state that fastens the individual to the state. This is why it has been said that all liberals are in fact liberal nationalists. Recently, some liberal theorists have attempted to account for cultural diversity while still preserving the spirit of liberalism by rejecting the doctrine of assimilation. They have done so by going back to liberalism's first principle, which hold that there is a distinction between the public and private realms. Within the terms of this framework, the public sphere consists of the state and civil society. The one aspect of the public sphere that must remain reserved for liberalism is what is termed as the political realm. Liberalism is accordingly thinned down to the bare minimum necessary to conduct political, but not necessarily any other form of life. Those can be lived according to the cultural phenomena of individuals. So this is the liberal theorist's position. And it is
Sameem साहब, प्रोफेसर जमालुद्दीन साहब, टाइम
अभी तो है.
हाँ 11:40 हो गए हैं.
अच्छा, let me conclude. Let me please conclude. In fact, both liberalism and Islam fasten the individual to their respective points of authority via body of public law that creates the particular problem of Islam or any theory of multiculturalism based on liberalism. Islam proposes a very specific relation between each Muslim and the state based on a body of public law encompassing both criminal or civil law. Christianity, Hinduism, Sikhism, and most other religions, they do not. This public law requires a state to enforce it. However, this law is fashioned on non-secularist principles that are incommensurable with liberalism. It is precisely this paradoxical similarity and incommensurable difference that contributes to the difficulty in recognizing Islam with liberalism. It even poses a problem for the weak secularism, as even then there would be certain areas of law, especially criminal law, and also some aspects of civil law relating especially, but not exclusively, to gender that are not easily commensurable. Thank you. I was to talk in particular on the Indian situation and the position of the Muslims, but I will take just a few seconds to say that in India, the question of minority was not suitably addressed in the Constitution of India. I say suitably, not suitably addressed. And that is why a host of problems Muslims face in our times. And there is need for the lawmakers to think over this issue. Then when the Constitution was being drafted, the problem, the partition of India was there in their minds. And that is why they rejected Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara to be our national song. They also, the chairman of the Constituent Assembly, he used his casting vote to reject Urdu as the official language. So this kind of mentality was there, which didn't allow even men like Ambedkar, they didn't think of having thoughts to make special provisions to protect the multiculturalism in minorities. Thank you.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया प्रोफेसर जमालुद्दीन साहब. अब सवालात का मौका है. 2 सवाल मौजूद हैं क्वेश्चन आंसर बॉक्स में, तो आपके सामने जरा देखिए Q&A लिखा हुआ है और उस पर लिखा हुआ है 5. हाँ, Q&A. Q&A कहीं नजर आ रहा है आपको अपने नीचे की तरफ?
अभी देखता हूं मैं।
हाँ, Q&A।
गाड़ी आदमी है, बीवी आई है मदद करने।
हाँ, चलिए तो मैं पढ़ देता हूँ फिर।
हाँ, वो भी मदद कर पाएंगे।
Q&A होगा, नहीं
जी
नजर आया?
हाँ साहब, नहीं नजर आए।
अच्छा ठीक है।
ये लोग आएंगे मीटिंग। जी फरमाइए। क्या है क्वेश्चन?
जी
हेलो।
जी
जी
जी।
फरमाइए। जी फरमाइए, क्वेश्चन क्या है?
एक क्वेश्चन है, इस्लाम गिव्स मैसेज ऑफ वन कल्चर एंड वन सिविलाइजेशन, व्हाई वी आर यूजिंग टर्म मल्टीकल्चरलिज्म इन इस्लाम?
You see, this may be a theoretical position, but living in India, do you think that Muslims in Kerala or Muslims in Bengal or Muslims in Kashmir, they share one civilization? Of course, they share certain things which are Muslims, but otherwise they are so distinct. Their languages are different, their cultural ethos are different. I have worked with people from Malayalam background, and I found that they were closer to their Hindu counterparts than they were not so intimate with the Muslims from North India working with them.
And other question is, being a Muslim is not just a religious identity anymore. It has become more of a socio-cultural identity. How much influence of culture does Islam allow in our lives? Is it okay to integrate culture and religion?
See, Islamic culture or tehzeeb, it is born out of values which are enshrined in the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, values are there. The moral Islamic morality is the strongest bond which unites Muslims. Yes.
Yeah. And other question is, why international humanitarian organizations are not able to make transparent accountability system to state across is liberalism is base of modern polity? Why it cannot be argued that international organizations evolved post First and Second World War are basically evolving mechanism of global governance?
Yes. You see, this needs a liberal attitude. Those who are involved in policy making, they must address to this problem. And because Muslims who have settled in Great Britain, my own daughter is settled there, and she finds no problem. And similarly, there are many others who are settled. Some of my relatives are settled in Germany, and they find no problems with the German laws. But yes, of course, when there are attempts to attack Muslims, they get agitated. So there is need for the state to make policies which allow Muslims to stay in the country of their settlement with their culture, and at the same time, Muslims should also be generous enough to give space to the culture of the country they are settled in. It should be, it is both give and take matter which should take place and which is not taking place right now.
The next question is, in the context of multiculturalism, how Islam sees the diversity of culture, because Islam says that it is the only right and true religion and culture as mentioned in Quran, Ja'al haqq wa zahaqal batil, truth has come and falsehood has departed. And when we accept other cultures and religions, it means we also accept that they are right. That is correct to what Quran mentioned. Can you follow?
See, the concept, yes, it has become more of a socio-cultural, and how much influence of culture does Islam allow in life? Yes, see, take for example the example of the Indian Muslims in the past, in our history. They came here, they settled here, they gave put them with them from Central Asia or Persia, etc. But at the same time, they accepted certain cultural things from India. For example, they accepted music. They accepted Indian architecture, although far stronger than the techniques of techniques, yet they allowed the Indian artisans to go ahead with their techniques. And in music, and for example, a man of the stature of Amir Khusro, he is he introduces a new musical instrument, the tabla, and the Indian music is being played in the Khanqa of Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia and other Chishti Sufis, in order, you see, to get that a spiritual state in which they try to connect themselves with spirituality. So culture was accepted. It is true that Muslims accommodated with whatever they came across. Now, I don't. I will be talking about how Muslims, those who are accepted the Indian symbols or the Hindu symbols in their coinage. I will discuss it in the afternoon, inshallah.
जी
ये मंसूर साहब, और कोई क़यामत आपकी तरफ से?
हाँ, एक और क्वेश्चन तो भी कई हैं, लेकिन हमारे पास टाइम अभी 5-6 मिनट है। वैसे एक क्वेश्चन ये है कि सवाल ये है कि there is an opinion in the society that when Muslims become dominant in the society, politically or socially, they try to abolish other cultures and religions and forcefully convert to populace to Islam. Why is your opinion regarding that in the light of Islamic history and the current debate in India?
who could be a better Muslim than Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, alayhi rahmah? To his khanqah, one of his brought a Hindu and asked him to convert him to Islam. He refused. He said, "Now this is not my job." One of my friend, he wrote an article titled as Ishate Islam mein Sufiya ka. And in that, it was written in Urdu, and he argued that, see, Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, he refused to convert. I said, then please, you change your title. You should have changed your title and said, Islam ki na ishaat mein Sufiyon ka hissa. मैंने उनसे एक सवाल पूछा, व्हाट इज H2O? बोले मैं क्या जानूं, मैं कोई साइंस का आदमी हूं। तो मैंने कहा ठीक है, इसी तरह से ये शेख निजामुद्दीन औलिया का एरिया नहीं था कि वो कन्वर्जन में इन्वॉल्व हो। एंड you see, there is a debate on what led to conversions. Many people were got attracted to the state, entered imperial services, and declared that they have become Muslims. So in order to get jobs, they became converts. There is a strange example in the time of Aurangzeb. There was a recommendation that so and so in Madhya Pradesh wants to convert to Islam, and if he is given the zamindari rights there, Aurangzeb said, okay, allowed. But then a minister of Aurangzeb, a Muslim, he interfered, and he said, in his intervention, he said that the zamindar there is a very strong man. If we appoint him, then you see there will be no revenue collection from that area. Aurangzeb said, okay, the permission is withdrawn. So this was the attitude. Yes, Muslims spread all over India, and had they adopted the policy of coercion or oppress the people and force them to convert to Islam, there would have been no Hindus in India, at least in those areas where the Muslim rule was established. It didn't happen. See, side by side, once I used a term, state within a state. Referring to Sufis, I said they were a kind of a state within a state. Wherever the Muslims reached, in north, in south, Chishti Khanqahs came into existence. And they were the ones who put a soothing balm on the injuries of the sentiments of the conquered people. They were there. So they were there to spread the message of Islam, peace with all, and all must be accommodated. So in medieval India, at least I'm a student of medieval India, that in medieval India we find so many examples of how the rulers accommodated non-Muslims in their rule. How their accommodation, there was a policy of tolerance which was adopted. I will be discussing this issue in the afternoon. जी साहब।
जी तो मेरा ख्याल अब टाइम ओवर हो गया है, अब चूंकि अब
जी
चाहे तो एक सवाल ले लें। सवाल तो अभी भी कई हैं।
हाँ ले लीजिए साहब, जो भी आप छांटे अच्छा सा।
नहीं, अभी जो बारी में है सीक्वेंस में उसी को ले लेते हैं।
अच्छा बोलिए
सिलसिले में हाउ मल्टीकल्चरलिज्म इन्फ्लुएंसेस द लाइव्स ऑफ मुस्लिम्स लिविंग इन कंट्रीज वेयर दे आर इन माइनॉरिटी।
See, multiculturalism is not a policy as yet anywhere. It is a political, sociological concept or doctrine or theory. So, but in in Europe, for example, they demand, they allowed, for example, to run their education in Britain, where Muslims have established educational institutions, which, according to a recent institutions, which were in terms of merit were found at the top. So this is happening, that since they are allowed this in education, they are of course, they will, for example, prescribe Islamic laws in connection with lesbianism or gay. The Quranic injunctions are very clear about the gay, but that's democracy they have accepted, and they are participating in democracy. They are they are contesting elections. They are being elected as mayors, and they are there as ministers. They are there as members of parliament. So they have accepted. There is always, you see, all kind of Muslim groups are to be seen there. There are people having affiliation in terms of thought with Deoband, Bareilly, Al-Hadith, and Shia, etc. All these groups are being represented there. And on several issues, they are unanimous. But there might be some differences, and they are discussing those differences. There are theological differences among them, but these differences are not costing anything to the state there. What is the harm in having multiculturalism? There is no harm. All cultures should coexist, provided that they do not violate the modern principles of democracy, citizenship, citizens' rights, equality, and justice. Yes, sir.
जी, तो मेरा ख्याल है कि सवालात भी काफ़ी अच्छे रहे और आपकी गुफ्तगू भी माशाल्लाह बहुत उम्दा रही। लोगों ने
आपका पेट अभी नहीं भरा है, मुझे लग रहा है।
और लोगों ने सवालात भी खुलकर किए, ये उन्वान भी बहुत अच्छा था। तो बहरहाल अब मौका है ब्रेक का। अब 2 बजे तक वक्फा है, ब्रेक है, तो इसके बाद हम लोग इंशाल्लाह 2 बजे फिर जमा होंगे। और जो लोग ऑनलाइन रहते हैं ऑनलाइन रहें, डिस्कनेक्ट यहाँ से नहीं होता, यहाँ से कनेक्ट ही रहेगा कंटिन्यूअस। तो 2 बजे हम लोग फिर मिलेंगे इंशाल्लाह। और
मेरा तो 4 बजे है, मेरा 4 बजे है शायद।
फहद साहब का एक लेक्चर है, प्रोफेसर उबैदुल्लाह फहद अलीगढ़।
हाँ, अभी 2 बजे है शायद उनका।
2 बजे उनका लेक्चर है और उनका टॉपिक है नॉन मुस्लिम्स ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ द प्रॉफिट सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम।
अच्छा, तो मेरा कब है? कितने बजे?
ये आपका उसके बाद फिर आपका है,
यानी कितने बजे? 3 बजे?
हाँ, ये
4 बजे?
नहीं, 3 बजे।
3 बजे है।
उसके बाद आपका 3 बजे और फिर अगला 4 बजे है।
वो किसका?
वो है हमीद नसीम रफियाबादी साहब का।
अच्छा।
जी।
ठीक है, मैं 3
ये तो आपकी नॉलेज में बात आएगी कि कल जो लेक्चर होना था उन्वान वो आपका रहेगा नॉन मुस्लिम अंडर मुस्लिम रूल इन इंडिया। वो लेक्चर
वो लेक्चर आज है।
जी, वो लेक्चर आज है अभी 3 बजे।
हाँ, वो लेक्चर आज है। और वो जो मुझे दूसरा देना था आज, वो डॉक्टर वसीम राजा करेंगे।
जी, ठीक है, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। तो इंशाल्लाह हम लोग दोबारा फिर मिलते हैं 2 बजे। ठीक, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
ज़ैडम साहब को सलाम।
हाँ
जी, वालेकुम अस्सलाम व रहमतुल्लाह।
अच्छा, ये इस टॉपिक पर तो आपको बोलना था, पता नहीं मुझे काहे को मुसल्लत कर दिया।
बड़ी ज्यादतियां हो रही हैं आपके साथ भाई।
ठीक है, खुदा हाफिज।
सब
हाँ भैया, ठीक रहा है, जवाब भी ठीक रहे।
हाँ हाँ मेरे पास नहीं है अभी। नहीं मार्केट से नहीं, मुझे बेटी भी देता है, कहाँ से ला अरे अभी तो नहीं चाहिए। अगर तय कहाँ आती है पार्ट से 605 अगर वहाँ दे, अगर कभी जरूरत होगी तो मैं बता दूँ। ठीक है, थैंक यू।
अंगूठी में लगा मेरे जानने को जा रहा हूँ, भाई का फोन आया था, बेटी को मैं और जगह